Hi, and welcome to another Poultry Keepers Podcast. In this episode, our hosts Rip, Mandelyn, and John talk about the things that leave them scratching their heads. We call it Why and What.
Mandelyn, what's your first question about a why or what?
Why do we put all this effort and expense into these birds? Sometimes I ask that of myself when I'm out doing chores, when it's 10 degrees outside and everything's frozen.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole episode or months of episodes.
I just started to say that's a book worth right there. And that's a good question. I've asked myself that many times. But, I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of it. I get to help other people. And poultry is just fun to me, just downright fun. There's no other way to look at it.
I always remind myself that there's a purpose to the flock, and it's where my breakfast comes from, it's where my dinner comes from, and it's where my future flock is going to come from. And since I'm breeding for our own future flock, I just need to remind myself every once in a while it's worth it, keep going, and look forward to great things coming from them, because eventually it does pay off in the flock result.
Yeah, I enjoy eating. I think we all do. I enjoy cooking and eating. That's no secret. But I've also found an incredible sense of peace in my birds. Y'all know that I am a veteran and I've been to some places and they're very calming. A lot easier to keep than bees. Bees will sting you if you're out in the yard and working and not in the right mindset. Chickens will just stay out of your way, and they really help.
John,
They bring so much joy. They bring so much joy just watching them.
John, you're absolutely right. I can have so much pleasure and enjoyment just going out, sitting on a 5-gallon bucket with a glass of tea or a cup of coffee and just watching those chickens do their thing. It's just so relaxing.
There's some mornings where it's cold, it's -20. I don't want to get out of bed, but my birds need me. They need food, they need water. Let's get up and take care of them. Sometimes my wife jokes that I take better care of my birds than myself, and that's absolutely true.
That is true.
Yeah.
They get their breakfast before I get mine.
Take care of the dog and the birds and then us. But that does highlight the importance. They are barnyard animals, but they do become very close emotionally as well. So some people do struggle with the harvest and the unaliving part, but that is a big part of it that we need to come to terms with.
Yeah, that was a difficult transition to go from just a layer flock to a flock that was giving us our meat too. And wrapping my mind around those emotions that come from that at the end of the day, after I have a freezer full of food, it's actually more satisfying because I know what went into them. I know every step of their rearing. They had a whole bunch of good days. And even on their last day, it still wasn't a bad day because we don't transport them, we don't haul them out. So they don't go through high periods of stress. And then we get to eat. And then I get to hatch another batch and watch a whole new group come up.
And the cycle continues.
Yeah.
I can see how people would have a hard time making that transitional step to where they're actually processing their own birds. And I get that. I get that.
It's hard. But if you get hungry enough.
John, you had some good questions.
Yes,
What was
I
one
did.
of yours?
Wow. Mine were some of the things that just set you off when you see people an innocuous question online and you get 10 people just parrot back the same wrong advice. Oh,
Yeah.
crumbles are water soluble.
You don't need grit.
You don't need grit. Okay. So this kind of ties into one of the things that you brought up about why are we treating avians like mammals?
Yes.
They're not mammals.
There's so many differences. I wrote an article a couple of days ago on that. I haven't posted it to any of the group yet, but it's coming. But
Well, insisting their birds need supplemental heat. All they're doing is setting themselves up for failure in one way or the other. We've all seen way too many coop fire disasters, unfortunately. But also, if you're relying on supplemental heat, you're breeding in the wrong direction. You want to be breeding for resistance to your local environment. Because when the electricity fails is when the heat fails, and that's invariably going to be the coldest, darkest storm of the year, when your
And that
birds
shock to
now
their
are
system is
relying
exactly
on the
worse.
heat the most and they don't have it versus being acclimated to it and they can cruise right through it with no problem.
Yeah.
One of those types of questions that really gets me going is I see somebody posting, my chicken has the sniffles. What should I do? And immediately it seems like 50 folks jump on there and say, get to Thailand. And they don't know what the real problem is. That using medications are just as bad.
You're creating a dependent flock.
Yeah. It's just as bad for chickens as it is for people.
It's not sustainable.
And you don't know the underlying cause of why the sniffles were there in the first place. Is that an environment, a husbandry issue? Do they have too much ammonia buildup and you're just going to medicate away poor husbandry method? Is it a infectious disease, which is especially important to know if you plan to share your birds out to other people? They don't need to be carrying any of that stuff to pass on.
No.
And even if you don't ever plan on shipping or selling or anything, get an NPIP inspection. Most state inspectors, they have time to come out and just do a courtesy inspection if you want. It's good to know what you have in your flock. They'll take the blood samples back to the lab. It's not going to be a mandatory euthanize the flock because you came up with something scary. It's not like that. It's a free inspection, and it's a service to you and your neighbors. You need to know what you may have. You need to know what your neighbors may have. Get a cheap microscope for $50 online. Learn to do a fecal float. Find out what coccidia you have and what your thresholds are, and learn how to keep an eye on it. And then you can manage it. Don't just start throwing medicine at things. Find out what is the actual problem. Establish your baselines. What's normal? What's tolerable? And when you start creeping out of those zones, respond appropriately. But in my case, I found 100% of the time, it's been on me with poor husbandry practices. Every symptom in my birds has been a flaw in my husbandry.
It's also a good idea to figure out if your state has a lab to do testing, in case you do lose more than one bird to something, you can send them off for testing and actually get the real answer of what's going on. And that really goes a long way in helping you figure out what your next steps are going to be.
Yeah. And folks, John said NPIP, but in case you don't know what that is, that's NPIP or National Poultry
Improvement
Plan.
Program. Just Google NPIP for your state and you're good. If it's not free, it's extremely inexpensive to have an inspector come out and sweep your flock.
Now,
for us in Ohio, it's like $75, which is worth it.
Still not bad.
That's one order of eggs through the mail if you're going that route, or just selling directly on the farm. Just the ability to your customers say, yes, the inspector was here 3 weeks ago. Here's my inspection results.
I've got a question here I want to throw out there, and this is one that gets me going too. If you see a post about, I want to learn how to breed poultry, or I want to learn how to show poultry, what's the first thing they're told? Go buy a standard. Yeah, but
why?
Yeah, why? What does that accomplish? And the real question they're probably asking is, I want to learn the steps in breeding poultry, or I want to learn what's involved in showing poultry. The breed standard is only going to give you one thing, the standard for all the breeds that are recognized by the American Poultry Association or the American Bantam Association. Mm-hmm. But they don't have any how to, why to, or when to type of information in there.
No, and all that knowledge is perishable. And with every generation, we're losing it. We need to grasp onto every bit of it that we have access to and perpetuate that forward. Absolutely. The good, true, proven information. Line breeding, closed breeding, not outcrossing.
Yeah, that's one that really grinds my gears online when I'm doom scrolling through the comments, is the insistence that you must outcross every 3 generations, or you must have a lot of diversity in your flock. And after all the hatching I've done over decades, I'm like, no, that's the exact opposite,
Even
actually.
after 200 to 300 years of very strict, controlled, closed breeding, there is so much variation in that genome. You're never going to.
As you and Mandelyn were talking, I'm sitting here and thinking, there's some flocks out there that have so much diversity in them already. But I don't know if they could ever straighten them out.
They could through pair breeding.
Very tightly controlled.
And it's taken a long time for some of them.
If you take 8 generations of back breeding on both sides and then bring those two together for about 8 generations of back breeding, you could probably get yourself what I would consider an inbred line or an IBL. Your strain. Perfect. But it's going to take 16 years minimum.
I think it was Kirby Jackson that made it really click in my mind when he talked about what's that parrot that doesn't even fly, just walks around on the ground on this island, and it has been there line breeding itself in nature for Lord only knows how long. And that bird is just fine. It's healthy.
It's perfect. It's perfect for its environment. And that's
Yeah.
what everybody should be breeding towards. Oh,
And they all look the same. They're consistent as heck
Mhm.
and perfectly adapted to where they live.
that's the goal. That's the goal.
And every time you interrupt a genetic pool with outside genetics, yeah, you get your diversity. And that's not always a good thing. It's more of a setback more often than not.
Exactly.
Unless you're doing critical ex situ conservation work and are doing it in a legitimate research, like college environment, there's never, unless you have the absolute last of something and it's only one gender that you have left, and you're still never going to get back to a pure. It's impossible genetically. But hey, what really grinds your gears, speaking of which, grit. Oh, we haven't harped on that for a little bit. If a species has a gizzard, it needs grit. They're not mammals.
I was just researching an article the other day about the differences between poultry digestion and mammalian digestion, and this is where a lot of people get confused. Poultry are omnivores. Some mammals are omnivores. But poultry, they're an omnivore, but they have adapted to perform best when eating grain. Mammals depend on, let's take cattle, for example. They eat the grass, chickens eat the grass, but mammals are suited to digesting grass. They depend on fermentation.
Ruminants, yeah.
The digestive system as poultry is so fast that it doesn't have time to ferment. So that's some of the biggest reasons. It's just two entirely different types of digestion systems.
Their beaks do the ripping and tearing, and then they swallow it down, and then the gizzard action with the grit does the mastication to extract the nutrients before it goes out the back end.
Several years ago, I had a hen that was acting a little bit off, so I pulled her and I put her in isolation to see if I could figure out what was going on with her. And I was hesitant to call her because she had a lot of value for the breeding program. Man, I need to figure this out. And it looked like her crop was overfilled. So I drained it and then started her on some garlic and apple cider vinegar and gave her some more grit in case she hadn't gotten enough herself. But over a couple days, she just got worse and worse. And then she looked like she was on the way out. So I just helped her the rest of the way out. And then I did a home look on the inside and opened her up. And she had a intestinal blockage from a giant ball of grass that had worked out of the crop and into the rest of her digestive tract. Just a ball of grass.
Mm-hmm.
But it clogged everything up in such a way that it wasn't even fixable anymore. And she was not going to make it no matter what I had done. But by opening her up and looking, I saw exactly why. So I went and threw a whole bunch of new grit in everybody's pen.
And even with grit, sometimes that's going to happen.
Yeah, because they might not actually take it up themselves. They, like when we're processing our cockerels, I'll go through and open up all the gizzards. And I'm not surprised if I find one cockerel out of every 25 that didn't even have grit in his system.
It's
I
interesting.
provide it. It's there. Did he pick it up and eat it? So unless I'm going to go out there and start pouring rocks down their throat to make sure, there's some birds that just don't take in what they need.
I've
Right.
They
seen
just
that.
won't.
I would
I've-
rather find an empty gizzard on processing day than to have one out in the flock reproducing.
Oh, yeah. Because it,
I
the end of
want
the day,
birds
that
that are
brings the
picking up
call.
grit and extracting the maximum nutritive value out of the money that I'm putting down their throats. That's ultimately what it comes down to. We're taking our money to the feed store or in raw supplies and watching it come out the back end of the birds.
Wasn't there a study that showed almost a 20% reduction in feed if they had proper grit? I feel like I saw a study somewhere that if you are providing grit
Oh,
and they're
anywhere
taking it
from
up the way they
10 to
should,
20%,
it's a
15
reduction
is
in
safe.
feed because they can digest more efficiently.
It makes a lot of difference. People don't realize that. Save you a lot of money, too. Mandelyn, you got a question for us? You got a what or a why?
I think you had more questions than I did.
I have
Okay,
a question, Rip. We haven't heard about your Reds in a little bit. What's going on with them?
They're just in a holding pattern, getting ready to set some eggs, hopefully here right in the near future. I don't like to hatch in when normally everybody else is hatching in that time frame because it just takes so long for Reds to really mature. They are slower than molasses in the middle of winter. There's no other way to describe it.
Sure.
But they're doing good. They're looking good. I'm going to switch feeds over to Kay Blackman's coming out with a new feed that he's going to call Show Pro All In. Everything that you need will be in the bag. He's even adding grit to all of the feeds, not just a starter. All the feeds will have grit added in the feed. That's a pretty neat concept. But no, the Reds are doing well. Interesting. I'm going to give a shout out to Sue Dobson. Sue's bird last year at our Red Club National Beat was the national champion. And this year, another one of Sue's birds was the national champion, but it was shown by J.P. Beck. But the foundation came from Sue. So she's red hot in the red department right now.
It's so great to see people succeeding and being able to share their genetics and their knowledge.
Yeah. So many people today, I don't know what the holdup is and the why for that is, but they just don't want the thing to share their genetics. That's crazy. Somebody had to share genetics with them.
I just really started earnestly, and I have mixed feelings about it. Because first
do
off,
too.
I hate the feeling of when I go to the post office, I know I should just stand there and light $20 bills on fire and smash eggs on the sidewalk instead of hand them my eggs because I'll probably get better results. Sorry, it's not quite that bad, but just what comes out at the other end, it's so heartbreaking to spend literally a month preparing 3 packages and doing everything you can to make them get there safely and having such horrible results at the other end. But watching the grow outs, wow, so gratifying.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. Be sure to join us next Tuesday when our hosts talk poultry, from feathers to function. So long and have a great week.